Claudia was kind enough to put together this thread about what happened in Poland. So let's go through it quickly. There was a missile explosion, okay? And it landed... the missile struck a grain dryer outside the Polish village of... I'm afraid I'm going to butcher this, Claudia. I'm sorry. Figueredo. I'm really sorry I butchered that. So that's 6.4 kilometers from the Ukrainian border. That's the most important part. Okay, so right near the Ukrainian border. There are 2 men killed, 58 and 60 years old. And this is just 70 kilometers. This town is just 70 kilometers from the nearest, largest Ukrainian city, Lviv. And what happened is Zelensky, the Ukrainian president, he immediately comes out and says, oh, it's the Russians who did this. Because the rocket is an S-300, right? The S-300 is a surface-to-air missile, which was built by the Soviets in the Cold War. They have a newer generation now, the S-400. But the S-300 and S-200, you'll find many countries around the world still using them. They're very capable. And S-300s typically fire missiles that are classified as long range. And we're talking about 90, 95 miles. So that's 150 kilometers, right? And the question that everyone is asking, including myself, is how the hell did the Russians fire a missile that has a range of 150 kilometers all the way in Poland? The radius, if you just look at the radius, it doesn't make any sense. There are no Russian S-300 installations or batteries in this radius. There just aren't. We know the Ukrainians have them. The Ukrainians have a lot of Soviet equipment because they were part of the Soviet Union. They still have, you name it, from tanks to, machine guns to planes, you name it, they still have them. That's common. So it stands to reason that the Ukrainians probably did this because, it happens. Things misfire. They misfire. And instead of just taking responsibility for it, he goes on this weird, Zelensky goes on this weird crusade and he keeps insisting it's the Russians. And this is so embarrassing because I'm going to show you this clip right now. Biden, NATO, so Stoltenberg was the Secretary General of NATO, and Poland, the victim, are coming and saying this was not Russia. It was not Russia. And Zelensky keeps insisting, it was Russia. What the hell is this? Here's the clip, man.
There is preliminary information that contests that. I don't want to say that till we completely investigate, but it is... it's unlikely in the minds of the trajectory that it was fired from Russia, but we'll see.
We have no indication that this was the result of a deliberate attack. And we have no indication that Russia is preparing offensive military actions against NATO. Our preliminary analysis suggests that the incident was likely caused by a Ukrainian air defense missile fired to defend Ukrainian territory against Russian cruise missile attacks.
Jest niestety wysoce prawdopodobne, że jeden z pocisków, które były wystrzelone przez ukraińską obronę przeciwrakietową, niestety spadł po prostu na naszym terytorium.
Okay, so you saw that was Biden, President of the United States, the Secretary General of NATO, and the Polish Prime Minister. All of them saying, the President, all of them saying that this was not intentional and it wasn't the Russians. Now let's play Zelensky, okay?
Я навіть не сумніваюсь в доповіді вечірній мені особисто від командуючого повітряних сил до главкома Залужного. Я не сумніваюсь в тому, що це була не наша ракета або не наш ракетний удар. Вони не мають сенсу їм не довіряти. Я з ними війну пройшов.
I get his logic. He has to trust the people around him, but that doesn't mean that the Russians did it. This is so weird. And I want to show you the hilarity of this, because if you go on Google and you look this up, look at Zelensky contradicting himself. 20 hours ago, so this is from The Hill, 20 hours ago, Zelensky insists missile that hit Poland was not Ukrainian. And 3 hours ago, Zelensky is now saying, I don't know 100% what happened. So let me just read this briefly to you, okay? So Zelensky previously insisted that the rocket was not Ukrainian and wanted evidence if Ukraine's air defense was responsible. But he softened his position at Bloomberg's New Economy Forum in Singapore on Thursday, saying that the Ukrainian military leaders told him that the crater from the blast site suggested that a Ukrainian anti-air rocket could not be solely responsible. Then he said, I don't know 100%. I think the world also doesn't know 100% what happened. We can't say specifically that this was the air defense of Ukraine. Look, man, I'm sorry, but everybody's saying it is. And even NATO's trying to cut him, they're trying to cut him some slack. They're saying, look, this looks like it was a Ukrainian rocket, a Ukrainian misfire, but that doesn't mean it's Ukraine's fault because Russia's the one that invaded Ukraine. So even when they're attributing blame to Ukraine, they're still trying to they're still trying to save face while saying that it was his air defenses. And I want to just point to another example, because last year, when the Israelis were bombing Syria, which they do every week, there were some surface-to-air missile batteries that launched S-200 rockets. So that's the generation just before, also Russian. They fired these rockets, these missiles at the. They said rocket in that article, and it threw me off. They fired these missiles at the Israeli jets, and one of them was apparently errant, and it followed the Israeli plane for 200 kilometers. 200 kilometers, which is within the range of an SA-5, as NATO calls it, or S-200. And it landed, I think, around 30 kilometers from Dimona, and Dimona is an Israeli nuclear site. It's where they developed and have nuclear weapons, right? Undeclared nuclear arsenal. So obviously you can see the danger of that. You don't want missiles anywhere near a nuclear site, whether it's a civilian, a nuclear reactor, or a military installation. Nowhere near. And a lot of people were laughing at that. It's like, you know what? You want to bomb Syria? Okay. This is fate. The rocket, the missile was errant and followed you all the way there. So I'm just telling you this because it's a recent example of how these systems fail. It's not because they're bad or something. It just happens. And it's so weird that Zelensky just doesn't want to accept that it was the Ukrainian air defenses. I mean, just think of it in another way, because I showed you geographically why it doesn't make sense, right? Here, let's go back to the radius, okay? Because again, it can go up to 150 kilometers. There are no Russian installations in this radius. The other thing you should ask yourself is, if it really was Russia, what the hell were they firing at? The non-existent Ukrainian Air Force? Were they firing at cruise missiles? Does Ukraine even use cruise missiles? It doesn't make sense. Why would the Russians even deploy this specific weapon in the first place? Never mind the fact that they're too far away to deploy it near the Polish border. Okay, so you have literally every indicator possible, both rational and scientific and political, telling you this wasn't the Russians, and he keeps insisting it was. I'll just say one more thing. The reason this is significant is obviously because 2 people died in Poland, which is very tragic. The ramifications of it politically is that if Poland wanted to, they could go and say, we are under attack, and we feel threatened, and we want to activate, NATO's Article 4 or 5. Okay, they likely number 4, but either way, this would be very bad because it means escalation. So again, you have to ask yourself, why would the Russians be this stupid to hit a NATO member? Poland is actually a NATO member. Right, and the United States has had Patriot missile systems there for ages, which are sort of their equivalent of this. Why would they do that? And they just killed 2 random people? What kind of military value does this have? I'm not saying those people don't matter; they do, but it just doesn't make sense. On top of everything else. And I want to play you a clip which is so weird. This is Rishi Sunak, so the British Prime Minister, and Justin Trudeau, the Canadian Prime Minister, and they called Zelensky, and I swear to God, I couldn't believe this was a real clip. I was so confused. I thought this was like a comedy bit. I thought somebody voiced overed a video of them. Take a look.
Hello, Volodymyr. It's Rishi and Justin. I really wanted you to hear from us as friends.
We absolutely know how difficult yesterday was. It was horrific for you and your country, and we have called it out in the session that we've just had and on the media here this morning, and we made that point loud and clear to everyone who was here, that what your country had to live through yesterday was unacceptable and represented yet more barbarity from the Russians. We stood united in condemning it.
Rishi and I really wanted to reach out to reassure you, to show you we're standing with you, and to say we're gonna figure out this step by step all together.
Look, man, I don't know about you guys, but that was just weird. That was really weird for some reason. It sounded so forced and plastic and synthetic, and I was like, why are they doing this? Hi, Volodymyr, our friend. How are you? Jesus, man, that was just weird. Sorry, it spooked me for a reason. I really thought someone took a clip and voice-overed it. Anyway, it was just weird. So let's put this missile issue to rest. Yes, it was an S-300. Yes, that is a Russian system, but the Russians are too far away to deploy it. The Russians don't have a target to fire this weapon at. And NATO, the United States, and Poland, the victim, are all coming out and saying, the Polish president himself, are saying this wasn't Russia. So that's really embarrassing, because some people are suggesting that Zelensky was like trying to do a false flag and get NATO like dragged in. I don't know. I mean, NATO looked pretty involved already, but I don't know if that's true. But if it's true, if this was a false flag, it's the worst one I've ever seen in history. Get your allies on board before you do this, man. Get them on board, Don't have them come out and contradict you in public. It just looks very unprofessional. Again, I'm not saying it was. I'm saying if it were, because some people think it was. And I think now that the dust is settled, and they're all coming out and saying, it wasn't the Ruskies. He's calming down. But let's put it to bed, right? Let's put this issue to rest.